Good morning. Welcome to the first Sunday in 2019. How many times have you written the date wrong so far? This morning we're going to look back at some of the conversations we had in 2018. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, it is the first Sunday of 2019. I hope your year is off to a good start. You know, during the past year we spoke to so many interesting people. I thought it would be fun to relive some of those moments today. The biggest problem for me was deciding which ones and what segments we could fit into the limited time we have available. Let's start off with a conversation that happened almost a year ago when we had a chance to talk with Willie Erickson, one of the legendary ski jumpers in Upper Michigan history. Willie was an Olympian and a national champion, but he reminded us that in his younger days, skiing is what kids in towns like Iron Mountain and Ishpeming did.
At Christmas time, we used to gather up all the Christmas trees, go out in the neighborhood, anything that looked like a little hill, we'd build a ski jump on it. And we started that way, and it was always a great thing. And we thought as young kids, what else can you do? We didn't have all the fancy smartphones and things that kids use today, and so it was just the natural thing to do.
You know, when you were a kid, was there a jumper or two who really inspired you?
Don, there were a lot of them. Back in my time, I'm talking about the 50s and 60s and so on and so forth, but before that even, as kids, if you had any potential at all as a ski jumper, you always had somebody to shine up to. And I remember as a kid, 9, 10, 12, 14, 15 years old, shining up to guys like the Beatles brothers, Wilbur Rasmussen. We had a group of Olympians that were right here in the UP, between Iron Mountain and Ishpeming. Art Devlin, Art Tokol out east, out west was Keith Wegeman, some of the big names, Arnson Samuelsson. But we always had somebody to look up to, and that was always our shining light. We wanted to be like them.
You know, how old were you when you took your first jump off Pine Mountain?
I was 15 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was just an exciting thing, and I got to say to you, Don, that back in those days we had to walk up the entire hill, the landing and the tower. And nowadays it's a little different.
Quite a work. Were you apprehensive on that first jump?
No, not at all. It was. I think I took 12 jumps that day, so that can tell you something about it.
With ski jumpers, fear can't be a factor, can it?
No, fear is out the door. I mean, I think you just concentrate on what you got to do, and that's what it was all about.
Probably the most serious condition you have to deal with is wind, right?
Wind is always a condition you have to deal with, and of course, it's back in the day, it wasn't monitored like it is today. Today they have ways of communicating with wind speed meters and so on and so forth. So it's more controlled today. So they don't jump in entirely heavy winds like we did years ago.
You know, we think about ski jumping here, you know, Ishpeming and Iron Mountain, but at least back then, and maybe today, there was really kind of a circuit around the Midwest and the country, wasn't there?
Well, if you want to go back, for instance, like we're going to talk about the Olympics, back in the time from the 40s all the way up until 1988, between Iron Mountain and Ishpeming, we always had members on the U.S. Olympic or world team. And today, of course, we don't have any jumpers at all in either place. And it's, but the sport has changed a lot since my time.
I was mentioning before, and the fact that there was kind of a circuit in the United States too, and I'm remembering places like maybe Duluth and.
Absolutely. Back in our time, we had competitions throughout the entire country because if we went out east, we were competing with guys like Art Devlin, Art Tokol, Roy Sherwood, some of the former Olympians from out there. Out west, Arnson Samuelsson, Keith Wegeman, Marvin Crawford, some of the famous skiers out there. Midwest, we had our own group. Between Iron Mountain and Ishpeming, we were always represented on an Olympic team between 1948 and all the way up to Mark Konopik in 1988.
It was fun reminiscing with Willie. You know, in 2018, we learned there could be new life for the Empire Mine. We caught up with the chairman and CEO of Cleveland Cliffs, Lorenzo Gonzalez, early in 2018 and asked him about that report.
We, at this moment, we have a decision to make if we're going to grow the company in Minnesota or in Michigan. We are going to go either or. There's no alternative that would be both. We are at a moment that we are maxed out in terms of our production capacity. We are initiating a new path toward producing feedstock to supply the electric arc furnaces in Toledo, Ohio, with our HBI plant. and our growth will be in that route. In order to be able to do so, we need to mine more ore. We acquired last year two properties here in Michigan, the minority position at the Tilden mine and the minority position at the Empire mine. And at this point, we own 100% of the mines and mineral resources, as well as the two pellet plants in the area. On the other hand, I also acquired land in Nashwauk, Minnesota, that could be a good and maybe less costly alternative to produce ore. So one or the other will be our path of choice.
I think people here want to know then, what do they have to do to have you make the decision to come to Empire Mine?
If Michigan demonstrates that they have a resolve, a unified resolve behind having Cliffs growing mining here, we will be here. Because I don't feel like I have that type of support in Minnesota. And that's a lot more important to me than just dollars.
When do you expect to make that decision?
Sometime this year, and more likely around the middle of the year.
Well, clearly that decision did not come by mid-year or even year-end. We'll see what 2019 brings. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Well, during the past year, we had the pleasure of talking with Bill Verret, who helped to build the Champion group of companies, including Champion Gunlock, into one of the major Upper Peninsula industrial leaders. Bill has assigned some of the major leadership roles in the organization to others, but still is actively involved. I asked him to explain his role at Champion today. You've kind of stepped aside from the day-to-day running of the company, but you haven't totally stepped aside. What's that title you carry today?
Well, it's one I invented. It's called
Okay.
Keeper of the Culture.
Okay.
And it allowed me to stick around. We have gone through a very successful plan to move new people into new positions that we've been working on for many years, and that's worked out very well. I like coming to the office. So as Keeper of the Culture, I am able to go out and ask questions, look around, talk about what has happened in the past and how it contributes to the future. And in fact, in all companies, there's somebody that keeps the culture.
Your company has been really successful. You know, what are some of the things about that culture that you want to make sure they maintain?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. There's no question that it's important that the customer is treated right and we do right by him and getting back to him and doing all these things. But I think even more important is that the employees of the company feel that it's a good place to work, that you're being treated right, you're being treated fairly, and that they have the feeling that there's a team and the team is moving the company forward. I mean, these are exciting times. This is the most exciting time of my business life, and it's because of what's happening within our company, what's happening without the company, and I very much enjoy being a part of it.
Well, let's talk about that, because you've observed this scene for over half a century.
Mm-hmm.
What excites you and what concerns you as you look at the future? Not just about your company.
No,
but
I
about
understand
the
that.
UP.
I am excited about the economy of Upper Michigan. I think what's happening here when you start looking at the mining industry, the forest industry, manufacturing that's going on, particularly in Dickinson County, there is an exciting future for young people and people in business. I truly believe we're getting to, if we're not already there, no need for young people to pack up and leave the area.
Well, and you certainly have seen a major improvement over the years in the labor management relationship.
Well, and that's true. You know, a business is done differently now than it has been in the past, and trust has to be the basis of all business. And if you are not in a situation where you are trusted or you trust the people you're doing business with, things are going to go wrong. And that is not only a new thing, it's always been a matter of trust. But based on trust, doing projects in a construction management, or doing them as a general contractor, or doing them as a procure, construct, operate even in some instances, are moving things forward. But the basis of all construction, the basis of all business is trust.
The danger of some prescription drugs continues to be a major crisis in this country. One of our conversations in the past year was with Dr. John Leighton, who deals with addiction. I asked him about the appeal of opioids.
Really hits the reward area of the brain. You use an opioid, it gives you a good feeling. It gives you euphoria, makes you feel better. Those are kind of, and really is hitting the neurotransmitter called dopamine. That's the one neurotransmitter that is actively involved with opioid issues.
And when we talk about people having a crisis, these aren't people who are drug addicts, who start out with recreational drugs. Often they're taking a prescription.
Exactly, for legitimate reasons. They break their leg and they have pain and they get put on a pain medication. And unfortunately, many, especially if they're in their teenage years when they're really susceptible, that increases their chance they could potentially develop a problem down the road.
The average adult, how does it get out of control? What happens typically?
Well, again, the brain compensates for whatever you're using. And when you don't have the opiate there to create that good feeling, the dopamine level goes down, you don't have it there, you start to have withdrawal, you don't feel good, more depression, so you have all kinds of symptoms and basically withdrawal off of it. So, you know, the brain depends on, if you will, the medication that, or the drug that you've been using.
Are there alternatives to opioids that doctors could use?
There are, and chronic pain management is something I do a lot of because people are on opioids, and so we have to get them off it, and we have to work on finding regimens of medications that we can use for chronic pain, which we can, and we have. There are a number of them that are out there that are good solutions to that kind of a problem versus continue to keep people on opioids.
What is the likely outcome? What do you think might happen here now that we have the attention of healthcare and government agencies and the public, that something has to be done about this?
Well, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I mean, when we look at the amount of sudden deaths that happen in this country, 100, who knows how many hundreds a day are still dying. People are saying, well, it's kind of plateauing out. In certain areas of the country, I'm sure that's true. But it's still, there's so many people that have an addiction to the opioids and really don't have access to resources in order to get the help that they end up needing. Now, whether you see an addictionologist like myself, go to residential treatment, and there are a number of programs, substance abuse counselors, there's options out there. People need to access that when they have developed this problem, because without it, they're not going to have a whole lot of chance that they're going to be able to do it on their own.
Good advice from Dr. Leighton on this critical issue. I'll be back to talk about the Grand Hotel in 2 minutes. Looking back at more of our conversations from 2018, we had the pleasure of talking with Dan Musser. He and his family before him have been in charge for generations at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, which continues to be one of Michigan's major attractions. We talked with Musser about where his guests are coming from today. Where do you find most of your guests are coming from now? And has that changed over the years?
It has, and Pure Michigan's helped that expand our brand and our reach. But basically, if you do a big circle around the Great Lakes, that's the majority of our guests. And then New York, New Jersey's a good market. Florida, but I kind of think that's Michigan annex a little bit. Yeah. A lot of transplants. Texas is a great market for us. I think to escape the heat, and maybe our Americana sells, I don't know, but we do well there. And then California, just the sheer size of California, I think we're getting the stuff falling off the crumbs falling off the table.
And I do recall, I think from a previous conversation, that you mentioned you have more employee rooms than you have guest rooms.
We have about 600 employee rooms and 393 guest rooms.
Wow.
Which is kind of when I go to industry meetings around the country, I kind of throw that out there and they'll look at me like.
One of the things that people probably don't realize is the efforts you've gone through to actually make some changes, to add some capacity, I guess, and yet maintain the historic charm. That has to be very challenging.
There's a fine line there between I think, improving and making this iconic structure better and meet the needs of the traveling public of today, but also keeping in mind that it is an iconic image and structure, and we have to be mindful of that. And we have added in recent years cupolas on the 4th floor that originally were on the 3rd floor of the original hotel. Okay. And so if you look at old photos and you look at the current hotel, you almost don't even realize what you're looking at, there's another floor there. And so we've tried to be sensitive that way in all areas. But we've added TVs, we've added Wi-Fi, we've done some things that
things you have to do to stay. You know, for some people it's probably cost prohibitive.
Yes.
To stay at the Grand Hotel, but you have made some special options available, haven't you?
We have, particularly since the downturn, which was in between our last discussion. I came up with a plan to do called Celebrate Michigan and offer to Michigan citizens at our lowest rate of the year, and that's become very popular both in the spring and the fall, and we'll have 1,500 anyway guests, maybe closer to 2,000 guests in the spring and fall that take advantage of that. Okay. Might not be able to afford to come in July and August, but they get to experience the Grand Hotel experience.
And you've also come up with kind of a bed and breakfast option on a limited basis?
We have, yes.
And that again is a little special rate because people aren't paying for dinner unless they choose to.
That's right. And now with our various options outside the main dining room, it's a good way to go. You know, we found that almost all of our guests end up at least one night in the dining room.
Well, during this past year, TV6 said goodbye to Vicki Crystal, who had been a fixture for over 16 years on the morning news. Vicki left in answer to a new calling. We talked to her about how her television career started and what she had planned for the future.
I'd always done a lot of television with the MDA telethons, you know, and I had a great time doing it, was comfortable speaking on a microphone. And the production manager at the time, Karen had always joked, I'm going to get you on TV regular one day. It's like, Karen, I am not a television person. You have to dress up every day and wear makeup. I liked sweat clothes, you know. But there was a change of ownership at the radio station, and they were looking at making changes, and I had a gut feeling. They never came right out and said it because I left before they could. I had a gut feeling that it was either going to be, you know, shifting things around a lot or maybe just out and out being fired. I didn't know. So I had a long conversation with God on my way home and said, well, you know, what do you want me to do? You know, I'm open to do whatever. And I got home, and like 2 days later, I had a phone call from Karen, and she had told me that the morning on-air person at that time, Jody, was leaving, and would I like to come in and try for the job.
Vicki, you're going to be taking on a new career as a church pastor.
I am.
And this is new, but I know church has been part of your life for a long time.
It really and truly has. Didn't realize how important it was to me. Like many people, grew up going to church, fell by the wayside. It wasn't until I became a mom that I started to become very active again in the church and learned to do a lot of different things. I was taking care of some things before a vacation. I was going to the Grand Canyon with my family and was going over some things with my pastor. And he had said to me as we were finishing up our conversation, he goes, I've been meaning to talk to you about local license pastoring. I said, for me? And he's like, yeah, for you. I said, no, I'm a certified layperson. I fill in, that's where I feel I need to be. And we didn't pursue it too much more. And I left, and as I was driving home, it's a 2-mile drive from my house, from my church to my house, I just couldn't shake it. I just got this conviction on me that, you know, you could do this. This is something that is the next step. I went to bed that night knowing that I had to drive to Wisconsin the next day, and instead of thinking about the Grand Canyon of all places, all I can think about is, you know, this is a good move. This is where you need to go. It came on me so strong. I was not anticipating that at all. So I sent an email to my pastor and said, okay, you can send me information, but you can't tell anybody. It's not a done deal. The more I prayed about it, the more it felt like the right thing to be for me. It really and truly did. This wasn't a fly-by-night decision. There was a lot of consideration and prayer and, you know, talk with God back and forth about, is this what you want me to do?
Vicki is doing well in her new career. I'll be back to share some thoughts about customer service in 2 minutes. I sometimes get concerned about what passes for customer service nowadays. We have all this modern technology that does a lot of good things, but it also has taken the personal touch out of a lot of the issues we deal with every day. And so this week and next week, my closing thoughts will deal with just that. What's happened to personal service? You've heard my thoughts on enough subjects to know that I sometimes get a little frustrated by the things we encounter in life today. This time it started with a letter I received in the mail. It came the other day and it was sent to valued customer at my address. It's not the first time it's happened, but this time it did set me thinking. First, the letter was from a well-known national company that provides a local service, and I am in fact a customer, hopefully a valued customer. But in my mind, and perhaps it's just me, getting a letter addressed to Dear Valued Customer is just one small step above a letter addressed to occupant. Do they really know who I am? The truth is, I can be quite certain that some person in an office far away didn't sit down one day and say, let's send a letter to our customer Don Ryan to see if he would like to buy more of our services. Don is one of our valued customers, so let's address it that way. Now it's all done by computers that spit out these letters by the thousands, perhaps millions, trying to sell us their wares. It has all become so impersonal, and sometimes, in my case, the computers get confused when they see my name because both my first and last names are now common first names. I occasionally get letters where the salutation says, Dear Ryan. I get a little bit of joy just knowing how embarrassed that computer would be if it realized my first name is not Ryan. And I'm happy about that. Thank goodness my parents didn't call me Ryan, but that's another story. And we'll have another story, not that one, next week. Back in a minute. Time to wrap it up for another Sunday. Hope you enjoyed this look back at some moments from 2018. I want to let you know that if you would like to see the whole interview with the guests we featured this morning, they are available in the Ryan Report section at uppermichigansource.com. Binge watching is popular today with some entertainment shows, so if you want to try it, there are a lot of past Ryan Reports just waiting to be watched again. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.